Good morning, Aregbesola.
Good morning, Doctor. How are you doing?
I am well, thank you. And good morning, Vimbai.
It's always the
Lagos.
pop of color for me. It's always the pop of color for me. Good morning, Dr. Constance. How are you today?
I know. You have to read my wardrobe. Good morning, Vimbai, Yolanda.
I do, actually, at this stage. Don't come to Lagos, though, because you might go back without your wardrobe.
Good to see everyone. How are you guys doing? Benga, Yolanda here in Abuja.
Good,
thank you. Okay. All right, let's get to it. Hello there and welcome to the program. We begin with This Day newspaper. In This Day today, one hurdle overcome by the African Democratic Congress as the party celebrates confirmation of David Mark as national chairman and Rauf Aregbesola as national secretary. The party commended the Independent National Electoral Commission for this confirmation. We saw for a moment different people claiming chairmanship and disputes arising from long-standing members accusing new entrants of illegally taking over the party. Now, INEC has put a lead on that. Vimbai, what do you think this means for the party? And while you are at it, we can also comment on the other story on power infrastructure and NLC asking the president or the presidency to make sure that it reviews the current framework of privatization that we have, and also look at all the infrastructure problems in the country in terms of power.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Constance. You know, we were chatting just before you came on air, and we were saying that, gosh, you do love This Day front page because it gives such a wholesome insight into the various stories that are leading that day. And I think this is one of those instances where there are several layers to unpack, but fortunately, we have other papers that will also give their own angles. So let's begin with the ADC, which understandably was in jubilation yesterday and probably exhaled a collective sigh of relief because there were obvious concerns around whether their process would sail through, and this came from several different dimensions. Now let's start with the opposition within the opposition, if I may call it that. The dimension where after the new leadership emerged and Ralph Nosu handed over to the leadership of Senator David Mark, there was contention from Dumebi Kachiko, who said that no, these people are usurpers, they are hijacking our party. Remember, shortly after that, we also heard from Nafiu Bala, who was saying that no, he's the rightful chairman of the party. All ADC members who have held senior positions in the past, and there were even some court cases as well that were pending. The ADC was always consistent in saying that they will resolve all these and so forth. So it's good to see that things have come together for them. Now, if you remember just a few days ago, they had shared the information that they've submitted all the necessary documentation to INEC and that they were awaiting ratification of signatures and other critical information. INEC had also said that they needed the NEC meeting minutes of that meeting where the leadership was handed over to them. So that has been done. The question is, what will the reaction of Dumebi Kachiko be, Nafiu Bala, and do they still have any room to stand on with regards to challenging this confirmation from INEC in court? So we'll wait to see where it comes from that. So that's from within the party. If you're looking at this from outside the party, you remember ADC began as ADA, or rather there were rumors that it was beginning as the ADA. And many people feel that there was this departure from ADA to adopting ADC because there were concerns that INEC would not agree to register ADA as a new political party. There was, so much tension around that period. If you remember, INEC then had to swiftly publish the list of over 120 groups that were interested in registering as political entities around that same period to dismiss the allegations that were becoming rife that in fact INEC's plan was to work in cahoots with the government of the day to create a one-party state. So I think this is a positive direction because we are still gauging the atmosphere around the lead up to 2027. INEC is continuing to become more and more of a topic at the front burner of the conversation, as we'll see with other topics later in the day. However, this is a positive step. Does it make ADC any more of a viable opposition. I think they still have a lot to do with regards to convincing the Nigerian masses that they are, a viable option. However, we also see that they're facing a lot of challenges.
Okay.
And they claim that it's from the ruling party. We saw instances of politically fueled violence in Kaduna State when there was that meeting. We saw an instance of politically fueled violence here in Lagos State when Gbadebo Rhodes Viva was decamping from Labour Party to ADC. So it's not yet Uhuru. I think they can celebrate the little wins, but they still have a long way to go. And of course, most importantly, for them to figure out who their flag bearer is another fight that we're all sitting and anticipating to see how it will play out.
Yeah, this is just the beginning for them. I think we're going to get to early campaigns, because if they're talking about their candidates, the chairmanship, the secretary, and all of that, at this point, we'll get to that story. But first of all, let's look at Daily Trust this morning. EFCC quizzes Mele Kyari over $7.2 billion refinery fund. The former group chief executive officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited had been on a watch list, and yesterday he honored that invitation to explain monies allocated to those refineries that worked for about a minute and then didn't work no more. Here, Kyari is quoted as saying, "I have done my part. EFCC must do theirs. When each of us does our duty without fear or favor, with honor, respect, and commitment, Nigeria moves forward." I mean, what an odd quote from a man in the middle of a storm, especially relating to the misuse of public funds. Having said that, Benga, do you believe the EFCC interrogations are now a spectacle, more show over substance? We are seeing this sometimes, cars, we cover it, the media, and at the end of the day, people just, fizzle out, disappear, and move on with their lives.
A very disturbing report indeed, because you remember sometimes, I think in 2019, when the federal government mooted the idea of rehabilitating the refinery in Port Harcourt, which was, I think, 1.5 billion naira. So we are talking about $1.5 billion, I beg your pardon. Now we are talking about $7.2 billion. That's about almost 700% increase in the cost of a whole refinery, alleging one person. But the big question that runs through my mind in a rioting way is what happens to Nigeria's procurement system? Why can't we tighten the news from that point where it becomes very difficult for that kind of money? Because obviously, whether he is indicted or convicted for this crime, it's obvious that $7.2 billion have been missing from the covers of the federal government. That's a lot. That's far more than the nation's national budget. So it's a very disturbing trend. The EFCC needs to, I think, partner with the procurement agency to see how they can clean up the system and tighten those loose ends where people could fritter away public funds. So I would rather want to see FCC coming at that prevention stage, because it looks like the money already stolen. The prosecution process, we've seen an established negligence of Nigeria's prosecutorial process. And so it's not encouraging, and we won't be surprised if this is also one of the many many cases of alleged corruption that would not see the light of day.
Yeah, we forgot to take one story from this day. Can we just pull up this day again? There's a story above the mask there about cleanliness, a toast to cleanliness, actually. It says here, Enugu State wins 100 million naira Model Green State Award as Oluremi Tinubu unveils nationwide renewed Hope Green Nigeria Challenge. Enugu won the 100 million naira award as the cleanest state in Nigeria. The environmental competition supports the planting and cleanliness in the country, paying attention to the environment. The Go Green Today for a Greener Tomorrow campaign provides prizes ranging from 20 million, 50 million, and 100 million. I mean, this campaign on preserving the environment and cleanliness is actually timely, Traditionally, African communities and societies had pride in maintaining clean homes, clean streets, and this supports public health and overall quality of life. But today, with rapid urbanization, we seem to be drowning in filth. People throw out bottles, what have you, outside, from the windows of their cars, or everywhere they go, they drop things on the road. So this campaign is actually needed at this way. If you want to come in here.
Yes, I mean, it is a part of the First Lady's Renewed Hope Initiative fund that she's giving out. It's been reported that she's given out at least 4.15 billion naira in 7 months. And that was as of last month. She's done rewards for support for tuberculosis, but a lot of it has also just been grants in Kano, 1 billion naira to support flood victims in Niger State, and now a Renewed Hope Initiative supporting green, making the environment cleaner and also green. I think on one hand, you do want to give credit for this type of work, especially when you see that the First Lady is also trying to raise money for a national library, and these are things that are important. But on the other hand, you see that we have these huge sums of money. She says she's raising this money privately and it's not government funded. But we see huge sums of money going essentially to what is called empowerment, but it's just giving out cash. And particularly when we're going to talk later about early campaigning, the fact that a lot of these programs, whether it's the First Ladies and whether it's official programs of the federal government, are called or have the title Renewed Hope, which is also the president's slogan, then some people might see this as electioneering in disguise.
You wanted to say something? Yeah.
Constance, I just wanted to mention something briefly about that. First of all, I agree completely with what Adesola has just said. And I mean, all I can say is congratulations on the initiative. But what I'd like to draw attention to, Dr. Constance, in all of this clean environment and, making sure that we're doing the right thing when it comes to our energy sources and stuff like that, I also want to look at how the FCT seems to be having so much deforestation. We seem to have so many trees, especially in the Maitama area. You see so many trees are being cut down. Same thing in Wuse too. And I'm wondering what's going on. Are we not supposed to be preserving these? These are trees that have been there for hundreds of years. Yes, you spoke about urbanization earlier on, but we need to look at, what effect are we also having on the environment in the urbanization of the country? We also have to look at the destruction that is also unfolding with this deforestation.
Yeah, what really gets me is the dirty environment. Everywhere you go, there's piles of rubbish. Even if you go to Maitama here, the so-called highbrow area of Abuja, you would see piles of rubbish in front of people's houses. You go to Guzape, you go to Wuse too. It's everywhere. It didn't used to be like this. And we have a local government, right? Local governments are responsible for, the grassroots. Well, this is when a major capital city, but when you go to the rural areas, it's also the same thing. What are the local governments doing about this? You pay taxes. Do they do their jobs? Clean environments affects the overall health of people. And, the urban appeal that goes with it, if your environment, is sparkling. So we really, apart from Olure, I think the government at all levels need to do something about that. Let's look at the Punch newspaper, 2027, still on politics. Please, INEC, move against early campaigns. But in New Telegraph, it says we can't sanction early campaign offenders, says INEC, even as it confirms David Ralph Aregbesola as ADC national leader. So shall we pull up New Telegraph there? So Section 94, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act 2022 prohibits commencement of campaigns earlier than 150 days. But there are no sanctions for offense, according to the Independent National Electoral Commission. On the other hand, there is a maximum amount of 500,000 naira for any party or person engaging in campaign 24 hours to polling day, and that's it. So the PDP ADC accusing APC of violating rules and calling for penalties, while the APC denies campaigning. The INEC chairman also speaks about campaign financing and how the commission is unable to track limits required by law. So many problems here. We're seeing rallies, advertising, media campaigns involving parties, people talking about elections.
Yes.
If there are no sanctions, it might be time to think about it, although some other people feel like you should not definitely legislate this kind of thing. So Vimbai, I know you had a thought on this. Do you want to share your take on this?
Dr. Constance, do you know what? I know Benga was at this event yesterday, so I'll take my my own analysis after Benga goes ahead and gives us some insight into how it all went down at this event that took place yesterday.
So
Okay.
Benga, do you want to?
Since the ball has landed on my
Yes,
call.
she's passed the ball. So
Okay, we all have seen campaign posters, arbitrary display, flooding the streets, flooding the public space. And it's on this that the INEC and some key stakeholders came together yesterday to see how they can enlighten the public about the dangers and the consequences of running a premature campaign. The laws are clear. The Electoral Act of 2022 is very clear on that. Section 94 says that it stipulates subsection 1 of the Section 94 of the Electoral Act 2022 states that it gives a campaign can only take place at 190 days to the polling day. And Section 95, subsection 1 also says that campaign must go along with the INEC rules and regulations. So they are calling for a regulated campaign, which I think that would create, would add to the credibility and transparency of our elections. But be that as it may, I think there's a lot of force majeure, a lot of insane circumstance in our electoral laws, because now with the advent of social media, how do you regulate the social media space? How do you identify the third party that might have posted pictures of politicians that even the principal, the dramatis personnel, the principal political actors might just be completely unaware of? So there is this school of thought that came that do we really need to legislate on premature campaign? And also there is also the disguised campaign coming in the form of a defection party, launching, and where people will now come out to say what they have been doing. It's also a subtle campaign in disguise. So this and all that, but be that as it may, I think the overriding consensus is to protect the sanctity of the ballot and to preserve Nigeria's electoral integrity.
and the fact that this is also a distraction from governance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Vimbai,
and also implication on campaign finances.
Yeah, exactly.
So the foundation around it, really, very briefly, the foundation around this is the principle of fairness. The reason why we say there should be 150 days or whatever the window is anywhere in the world is to create a window where there's somewhat of a level playing field. Now, what does this do? It enables us to regulate the amount of money that is spent. Currently, if you look at the Electoral Act 2022, presidential limits are 5 billion naira, governorship are 1 billion naira, senatorial and House of Reps are 100 million and 70 million respectively. Now, we all know that far more than this is being spent. And if we're now to extend the period where electioneering begins, that means that he who has the biggest pockets is going to take away the election. Although the argument is already on ground that, well, that's already the state of our electoral system is such that the deepest pockets always win. But at least let's make an effort to abate it. Now, this isn't a new problem. If you remember 2007, that's when PDP's incumbency was first questioned, and people said that, remember, PDP had all of the awareness campaigns about all they were doing. They basically had permanent billboards and media space at that time. But they came and said, this is not campaigning. These are awareness messages or thank you messages. It continued to 2015. Remember, 2015 was very contentious between Buhari and Jonathan, and some civil society groups even went to the courts to try and get some interlocutory interventions against it. But the courts ultimately said that it's very tricky tricky to be able to decipher that these awareness messages or thank you messages or thank you rallies have the intent of campaigning. So it goes back to the fact that this Section 94, subsection 1, it doesn't give us enough insight. It doesn't have the type of depth of detail that one requires to be able to make it enforceable and to be able to decipher what exactly constitutes campaigning.
I mean, we also have to start with the cost of tickets. Governorship tickets, presidential tickets, all those are so expensive that it looks like the party is actually just raising money through those forms, and it removes a lot of people from being able to contest. Let's go to Vanguard newspaper. 2027 microzoning stirs tension in PDP. You know, we're just talking about this. The party is facing tensions in Osun, Lagos as members reject zoning arrangements. And let's see another piece above in that same paper. NCAA orders airlines to blacklist unruly passengers. The Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority has asked airlines to go ahead and do this themselves, and that airline staff must be treated with dignity. I mean, fair point, Yolanda, but passengers also must be treated with dignity, and if airlines reserve the right to ban a badly behaved passenger, there should be a process, including an opportunity to hear them out before they are completely banished. Don't know if we have time to discuss that. Let's go to Leadership newspaper. Finance Minister clashes with reps over budget implementation, in which he says that 80% of the 2024 budget has been executed. It's reported that the meeting between the Finance Minister, Wale Edu, Minister of Budget and National Planning, Atiku Bagudu, and the House of Representatives descended into a shouting match. The lawmakers were also peeved due to the fact that poor implementation affects their constituency projects and also affects their re-election chances. I have to say from past records that 80% implementation is actually quite strong, especially given, you know, our fiscal challenges, our institutional challenges that makes it difficult to execute. At the same time, why are we even talking about the 2024 budget? Adesuwa, this is your area, you cover the House. Was it a robust debate in the House about this, and how do you assess everything that was said?
Well, it was a closed-door meeting, but it was definitely rumored to be very shouty and tense, because if you remember, there was a leaked messages that said that from the House of Representatives, a message, one of the lawmakers had said 80% of us are suffering and we're afraid to go back to our constituents during this legislative break because our projects have not been funded and our contractors have not been paid. And so this is September of 2025, and as we've been talking about electioneering, part of this electioneering is that they are afraid that if their constituency projects are not completed on time, they would not be able to campaign properly. So part of this is fighting for the people, but also fighting for their chance to return to the Green Chamber. And also, you know, we have to put this in context. Contractors were protesting in front of the Ministry of Finance just last week. You know, you have to put this in context. And so that's also partly why you see the First Lady giving out billions, and then you see lawmakers not able to access funds. And yes, 80% is high, but again, we are in September of 2025. We're running 3 budgets concurrently. However, something importantly that the finance minister said is that they are not looking to have another funding budget in 2025. So there's not going to be an additional supplementary 2025 budget as of now, that they're not planning to do that again this year to try and plug any shortfalls. But I imagine that we're going to see some motions when the House comes back on the 23rd of September about this issue at hand, because the members really, really are very sensitive when it comes to their constituency projects.
Yeah, I would have wanted us to comment on President Tinubu's visit to France. You know, he had lunch with the president, Emmanuel Macron, but well,
in the dapper suits.
Yes. I mean, let's go to the international headlines. We can take that all together. Here we have a daily graphic: fight against Galamsey, state of emergency last resort, according to President Mahama. And the Times newspaper: Starmer refuses to sack Mandelson as U.S. envoy. Lord Peter Mandelson, who is the British ambassador to the U.S., was named in the Jeffrey Epstein files. Then Daily Mail: the royals are on the front pages today. The full inside story of Charles and Harris's 54-minute reunion over tea. We have that also in the Sun. Harry with the King. This is, big news in light of the fact that Harry is meeting his father, King Charles, for the first time in 19 months. And then the Independent, Poland shoots down Putin's drones and ones were closest to war since 1939. Yolanda, you can take any of the stories.
All right, well, I'll mix a little bit of the local and the international since I wasn't able to chime in on any of those stories.
Absolutely.
On the photo with President Tinubu with President of France, Emmanuel Macron, is very... I think what mostly got the attention was how spruce and lively President Bola Tinubu was looking, and I think that's what took most of the attention from the story. But also, let's not forget what's happening in France. The government is practically collapsing. Yesterday, there was, some protest, nationwide protest that was called Block Everything. Of course, the slogan was in French, but it translates in English to block everything because they were not happy with what is happening in the nation at the moment. The fourth prime minister was currently kicked out in 12 months, and so much is going on at the moment. And so to have this lunch meeting where we are not too clear on the details is quite eye-opening, because we're wondering what's going on in France and what conversations were had yesterday during that lunch meeting.
All right. I mean, anytime I see President Tinubu in France with Macron, they have a long friendship dating back to years. He's always looking giddy.
Yes.
And he's always looking giddy, like, I don't know. There's something that seems unpresidential to me in all of this. But anyway, it was a private lunch, and he's on a working visit, 10-day working visit abroad. We'll have to leave it there. That's, all we can take on the newspaper review for you today.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Constance.